Okay. All right. Terry, it's you.
Okay, I feel like we're very fortunate today to have Kathy Howisen with us, a friend of Hattie's. Hattie's the one that suggested we contact her. She is a professional journalist. She has been the author of fiction and nonfiction books, and an executive director of a nonprofit. I tell you, this is making me tired and lazy feeling to read this. And a retired Lutheran pastor. She became interested in studying about the Mayflower when her mother, who evidently was doing some family history, found out about Mary Brewster, a distant relative of theirs. And then I believe her daughter married someone that had some Native American Indian DNA. So it kind of all fit together. And today she's going to talk to us about Mary Brewster, the matriarch of the Mayflower, and just bring some of those things together. I don't know about y'all, but I know very little except the Mayflower came. I mean, that's about all I know. And so I'm interested to hear this. And I'm a huge historical fiction fan, so I'm anxious to hear this, and then I probably am going to buy the book and find out more, because I know very, very little about this time except what I was taught when I was probably in 3rd grade. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathy.
All right, well, thank you. So you can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so we're all on Zoom learning curves. I've had a couple of other interviews where they've sent me links that simply would not work. So we ended up doing the interviews by phone. And you've seen me moving my screen around, trying to find the right way so that I'm not hidden in the shadows here, trying to find a place that's quiet enough to do this without my dog barking, because if he sees a cat, it's all over. So I can tell you a little bit about why I wrote the book, and then what I discovered writing the book, and then I welcome questions. And I've got my watch here, so I understand maybe a half hour would be plenty, and then happy to field whatever questions you have. So this journey started with my mother, who was a reference librarian, and in her early retirement years hid in genealogy libraries in the Cleveland, Ohio area where I grew up, doing the very tedious work of documenting our connection back to William Brewster. She was actually a member of the Mayflower Society, which is no easy thing to accomplish. You have to come up with original documentation to prove your connection all the way back through all the generations. And that was done in the day before internet. So she did all that. One of the foolish things that I did in my young adult life was when Mom invited me to join with her. I was busy raising babies and didn't really think that was an important part of my life, and so I declined. Now, when I am past the age where Mom was doing all the research and I wanted to join so that that would be documented for my children and grandchildren, they've changed the rules. And so having a birth certificate that proves I'm my mother's daughter and her membership records was not enough. They needed me to go digging around in some other places and prove some other things. And I just wanted to write the book. So I've never joined the society because I really was focused on getting this book done. I got motivated to write the book, though, when my older daughter married into a large Hispanic family here in Houston. And Carol just kind of off the cuff one day said, and I think Rudy's dad, her husband's father, I think he's got some Native American heritage. I said, Carol, you need to explore that. That's worth scholarship money. And so she started poking around a little bit, asking some questions, and nobody wanted to answer her questions. So she kind of gave up on that path. What we have found out later through DNA is that indeed about half of his heritage is either Mayan or Aztec. I don't even know which nation it was. But they don't want to talk about it. Like many immigrants, and they're not immigrants, they were born here in the Houston area. As we say down here, the border moved, the people didn't. But anyway, they've been here for a very, very long time. So this was Mexico, and now it's Tejas. But they wanted to assimilate. They wanted to speak English. They wanted to be part of the American culture as it was evolving, and they're very proud of their American heritage. He served in the Marines, so they're very proud to be Americans with Native and Hispanic heritage DNA. But learning more about them and what their history has been like got me thinking about, I don't think I got the whole story when I was going to school. And I'm curious to know more about the story. So I started doing my own research. One of the first things I learned, much to my surprise, is that Mary Brewster is just sort of a footnote in history. William was married. He's fairly famous. You can find a lot of information about him on the internet. There have been several biographies written about him that I use for my research. It's easy to find out what he was up to, but Mary is just sort of an, oh, by the way, he was married and they had 5 kids. Actually, they had 6. She had a stillborn baby along the way. But we don't know very much about her. We don't even know what her maiden name is. There's 2 theories that have evolved over the history. I had to pick one for the sake of the book. Some people discredit that one. Other people are sure that's the right one to go with. So we just don't know. People are still trying to sort that out. It's hard because when people were doing all these things, they weren't thinking someday I'm going to be famous and people are going to want to know everything about me, from what I ate for breakfast to, you know, what I thought about local politics. They weren't recording all of that. They were just living their lives and raising their children and trying to get enough food to keep everybody going. So we don't have the documentation that we need to prove definitively who she was. So that was the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned that just really surprised me is when they sailed on the Mayflower, they brought their 2 younger boys who were approximately 8 and 6 at the time and left their 3 older children behind in Holland. They had exiled to Holland. I'll get to that in a minute. They're a very close-knit religious community of about, they started with about 100 people. It grew to about 300 people over the decade they were there. When they decided to come to this continent, the plan they put in place was that a small group of them, it turned out to be about 40, 45 people, would come and see if they could establish a settlement here. And if that worked, then the others would join them on future trips. There were many ships sailing back and forth, from Columbus's ship to the Mayflower and way beyond the Mayflower. There were many, many ships coming. So there'd been a lot of contact between the Europeans and the native communities. So they decided, well, we'll establish a community. If it works, they'll come over and join us. If it fails, as they knew Roanoke had, and as Jamestown almost did, we'll go back and we'll have a place to be. So we won't completely cut the cord to the Netherlands, but we're going to try and establish ourselves in a new settlement where we can run things the way we want them run on this continent. So they left their 3 older children behind, 2 daughters. One was about 20 and the other one was maybe 17 or so. Left them and their oldest son, who was by now a young adult and had a job in the community, with their faith community. And several people on the Mayflower left children behind with the faith community. They set sail, they came over here, they got established, they did survive. They did. Half of the people that sailed on the Mayflower did not. So I apparently have pretty sturdy DNA genes because my ancestors were among a handful that did not get sick at some point that first winter. And Mary ended up being one of only 5 adult women to survive the first winter, and the only one of 2 from their faith community in Leiden who survived the first winter. Their son Jonathan came over a year later on a ship called the Fortune, which brought 35 young men, which they were very happy to see because they could use more labor, but they came empty-handed. They brought no additional supplies with them, and they were desperate for food and supplies. So they have 35 more young adult males, and if any of you have raised teenage boys, as one friend of mine said, forget the mortgage of the house. That's the easy part, is keeping the refrigerator full with teenage boys in the house. So these young adult men showed up in large quantities and didn't bring any food with them. So it was a mixed blessing for them. So those were 2 big surprises I learned about Mary. So let me backtrack here a little bit and just kind of walk you in giant steps through the chronology of what happened. In William Brewster's young adult years, he was recruited to be an assistant to a fellow named William Davison. William Davison was the Secretary of State to Queen Elizabeth I. And during his time of service to her, he was an ambassador. So he went to the lowlands, is what they called the Netherlands. He took William with him as one of his staff people, you know, running errands for him, taking notes at meetings, doing whatever needed to be done. And during that chapter of history, we're talking now the 1580s, there was a lot of push going on that they needed to execute Mary, Queen of Scots, who was Queen Elizabeth I's cousin. Mary, Queen of Scots gave birth to King James, who was Protestant and eventually the head of the established Church of England. But at first he was a Protestant child being raised away from his mother. He was taken away from his mother when he was barely able to walk, and she was imprisoned his entire childhood because she was trying to take England back to being Catholic. And she had relationships with Catholic people in France particularly, but other countries as well, sneaking in priests and having underground Catholic worship services. But under Queen Elizabeth and King Henry, her father before her, England had become Protestant. You all know the story about King Henry VIII wanted a divorce so he can have an heir to the throne, and the Pope said, you can't, and King Henry said, hold my beer, I can do what I want, I'm a king. So we established the established Church of England, which today we would know as the Anglican Church. But Queen Elizabeth was in charge during the 1580s. Her Privy Council was insisting that she sign a warrant to have her cousin executed because she kept trying to overthrow the religious leadership of the country. And there were threats on Queen Elizabeth's life, and her Privy Council was confident they would continue. Even though Mary Queen of Scots was imprisoned, she apparently had a lot of ways to communicate with the outside world. So they pressured Queen Elizabeth I into signing this death warrant. It fell to William Davison as her Secretary of State to get her signature on the warrant. She did. And then he did what he was told to do. He had it officially sealed and documented and delivered to the place where Mary Queen of Scots was being imprisoned, and the order was carried out. But the next day, after Queen Elizabeth told Davison to do that, she had signer's remorse and realized this was a very bad political move on her part, because it's just not a good idea for one monarch to execute another monarch. It makes the monarchs all over Europe very nervous. So she threw Davison under the bus. When she threw him under the bus, she had him sent to the Tower, denied that she had told him to deliver the warrant, stopped short of having him executed as a traitor, but she sent him off to the Tower of London for a while. So that meant our friend William Brewster was out of a job, so he went back north to northern England, a little village called Scrooby. It's on the North Road that runs between London and Edinburgh in Scotland. And that's where he started exploring the separatist movement. He had already learned about it during his brief studies down at Cambridge. He did not graduate from there, but he did study there for a period of time. He had learned about these separatist ideas, but now they were erupting in his rural community in northern England. We talk about the Pilgrims as one group, but they're two. The separatists didn't think there was any hope for reforming the established church. They were just over all the hierarchy and all the hoopla that went with that, and all the political maneuvering between the monarchy and the upper level clergy. They just wanted a simple, kind of a home-based first century Christian community. So they wanted to separate. The other group that we know as the Puritans didn't want to give up on the hierarchy. There are advantages to being a very large institution with a lot of political connections. And so they wanted to purify it and get rid of some of the things that they found most odious, but keep the structure. Well, the separatists were in hot water with the hierarchy. They were trying to reform the church, and by now it was King James. Queen Elizabeth had died. It was King James who wasn't interested in having his church reformed. He liked it just the way it was. So he was evicting clergy from their pulpits. They had them come and worship at Scrooby Manor. Another thing I needed to tell you about Mary Brewster was her husband took over the job as bailiff of this manor when his father died. And this manor in modern times is not much, but in that era, it was quite an extensive estate. And it was where messengers would spend the night or at least stop by to change horses when they were delivering mail from London back up to Scotland and vice versa. The royalty would stay there. Sometimes when they were traveling, it was a very important place. So Mary became the mistress of this manor, which meant she was constantly entertaining people from all over the place. And I'm sure it was a very challenging position that she held. They had their first 3 children were born while they lived there. Jonathan, Patience, and Fear were born while they lived at the manor. But by 1606 and 1607, things were getting really dangerous for those who dared challenge the authority of the established Church of England. So they decided they needed to get out of the country. Several other separatist groups had already emigrated down to Amsterdam. So they had contacts there. So their plan was to go down there. So they sold everything they had. They made arrangements to get a ship to take them across the channel. They walked some 50 or 60 miles to meet the ship with their children and everything that they could carry and everything else they had sold and left behind. They were betrayed. There were people called searchers and enforcers. The enforcers were making sure you went to church. You were fined if you did not. Wouldn't modern clergy love to be able to get away with that? Keep track of who was there on Sunday and send you a bill if you weren't. I don't think we could get away with that today, but that's how it was then. And there were searchers who were basically bounty hunters. They were out looking for people who were meeting secretly, who were doing things that were forbidden by the established church and turning them in and then getting paid to do it. So the captain of the ship that they had hired to go across the channel and these searchers colluded, waited till they're all on the ship, and then came out and arrested all of them and hauled them into the nearest town, which was named Boston, and kept some of the men, including William Brewster, William Bradford, John Carver, the leaders of the group. And everybody else walked back to Scrooby, only they didn't have homes to go to. They had vacated them for this big journey they were on. So they were taken in by family and friends. The men were eventually released because they didn't really know what to do with them. So they sent them home and just said, you know, quit this, and slapped them on the wrist and sent them home. They regrouped and they tried a second time. The second time it worked. They eventually all ended up in Amsterdam. You may be surprised to hear this, but there was some conflict in the church community in Amsterdam. They disagreed about some things. And these people from Scrooby, who had already had their own harrowing challenges getting there, just didn't have the stomach for it. So they decided they'd picked the right country, but the wrong city. William Brewster had spent some time in Leiden, just down the road, some 25 miles. And it was a lovely city. He was charmed by it. He thought, why don't we go down there? So they relocated to Leiden. They were there about a decade. Mary, during that time, she had 2 more children. Well, actually, she had 3. The first pregnancy she had there was a stillborn, and history does not even record the gender of the child. But then she had her other 2 sons, Love and Wrestling. And so at this point, let me explain your name. So Jonathan is a biblical name. The name William is so common that they decided, I'm making this part up. This is not documented. This is my imagination. The name William is so common that I think they decided they needed a fresh name, and Jonathan's a biblical name, so they chose Jonathan. Patience was not born until 7 years after Jonathan was. There may have been some miscarriages or stillbirths in there that are not documented, but there was a 7-year gap. So my imagination says they named her Patience because it took that long for the second child to be born. Fear was named Fear about 1606, I think, and by then things were really starting to heat up with the people who were challenging the established church. She was not named because they were afraid. She was named because of the passages in the Bible about the fear of the Lord, as in awe or reverence or trust, that they believed that they were doing God's will. They believed this was the path God was choosing for them. And so they named her Fear as evidence of their profound faith. And then there's the gap and the move. by the time Love is born, they are relocated in Leiden. They've got this very close-knit first century style Christian community going on. People are living together initially till they get themselves sorted out enough and raise enough money to get their own housing. They're learning the language. They're just like immigrants that come here. They've got to learn the language. They've got to find a job. They've got to find housing. They have to start over again. And so they were living together while all this was transpiring. So they had this profound sense of love and mutual respect and dependence on each other. And the next child was named Wrestling. And by the time he was born, they were deep in conversation about, do we go over to this new continent we keep hearing about or not? Is that a good idea or not? Can we pull that off or can we not? And so they named him Wrestling, again, in my imagination, because they were wrestling with those issues. They're in Leiden. They decide to leave. But in the years they're in Leiden, good old William Brewster becomes sort of the English version of Martin Luther. He gets caught up in printing illegal documents, challenging some of the indiscretions that he's aware of in the church. Now, he writes them anonymously. He establishes a little printing company, and he gets some people to help him. Edward Winslow is one of the people who helped him. So they're publishing these pamphlets and other things that are less controversial. They're translating some things from the Dutch and other European languages into English that are just sort of historical documents or just kind of general information documents. But he's also publishing these religious treatises that are really upsetting by now King James. Although he's published them anonymously, people are beginning to figure out who it is who's publishing these things. The Netherlands was religiously neutral. As long as you paid your taxes and didn't get into barroom brawls, you could believe whatever you wanted to. They did not care. They would not take a stand on one religion versus another. However, they were caught between England and Spain and England and France. And England had come to their defense on several occasions, particularly with Spain. So when the King of England was upset, they were shaking in their wooden clogs. And so when the king said, you need to go arrest this guy, they kind of reluctantly came and closed off his little home office, and he went into hiding. So like Martin Luther went to the Wartburg Castle for 9 months. William Brewster went into hiding in both Holland and England. He was back and forth. He had many friends and people were willing to help him. While they were making the plans to leave, they secured the services of 2 ships, the Mayflower and the Speedwell. The plan was that the Speedwell would stay with them in the new land so they'd have a way to start a fishing business and they'd be able to explore the coast better. And then the Mayflower was just going to come and deliver some of the people and all of their cargo and turn around and come back to England right away. They actually left Holland in July of 1620, and the Speedwell sprung a leak. So they had to pull into port at Southampton and stay for several weeks to get that fixed. Meanwhile, at the last minute, the merchants, the people who were subsidizing this trip, they were in it for the money. They looked at these religious refugees who knew a lot more about the Bible than about how to make any money, and they scratched their heads and said, we're not going to get our money back from these people anytime soon, and we're not running a charity here. We're sending some people over who know what they're doing. So about half the passengers on the Mayflower were this religious refugee group, and the other half were people that their financiers rounded up and said, go over there and make this thing lucrative. We want our money back. They were called the Strangers and the Saints, and there was a lot of animosity between the 2 groups at first. The Strangers were not religious, but they were more likely part of the established Church of England, and they really were not interested in the separatist ideas. They wanted some money. One of those people was Miles Standish. He was sent along for military protection in case they would run into pirates or some other problem. And so another one was Stephen Hopkins, who had already been to North America once and had been to Jamestown and had made it back to England and wanted to go. And this time he went with his wife and children. So they all set off. The Speedwell leaked another time, so they had to go back to port and repair it. And the third time they set off from Plymouth in September. So they're now about 2 months late in leaving. 3 of the women on the ship are pregnant. There's 102 men, women, children, and 2 dogs in a living space that measures about 60 feet by 25 feet. It's in an area called the tween deck. So the top deck is the top of the ship, and that's where you'd be to look out over the ocean. And then there was this tween deck, which if you were short enough, you could stand upright in it. It was maybe 5.5 feet tall. Otherwise, you were stooped over to walk around in there. That's where they, quote unquote, lived. And then all other worldly possessions were down in the lower holes. Plus a crew of 25 or so people had to be on that ship. Plus, everything you needed to feed all these people and everything that you had to have to survive was all crammed into that small amount of space. They set off in September. They got mid-Atlantic and ran into what I presume was a hurricane. We weren't naming hurricanes back then, but from the descriptions of how bad the storm was, it sure sounds like it was a hurricane, which had the effect of cracking the main beam that supported the center mast, which compromised the safety of the ship. The crew wanted to turn around and go back to England. They would rather make half a trip across the Atlantic and back with a compromised ship than sail all the way across the Atlantic and all the way back to England. And the trip would have been aborted at that point, except you can credit it to whatever you want to. They had a little prayer meeting and prayed that they would be able to go forward. And somebody remembered that they had brought a giant, they called it a giant screw. It was something they were going to use in the building of their new structures. And whatever it was they had, it was adequate to repair the cracked beam, to stabilize the center mast enough that they could continue the trip. So they made it over here. They arrived in November, I think November 9th, just south of Provincetown. You know how Cape Cod is this arm? They arrived just south of the very hook of the outer rim of the Cape Cod area. They stayed there for over a month, about 5 or 6 weeks, while they sent out exploring expeditions. They did 3 of those. They brought a shallop with them, an oversized rowboat that can hold a sail. So they sent those people out exploring while everybody else stayed on the ship. Stephen Hopkins' wife delivered their baby while they were still out in the ocean. So they named the child Oceanus. I don't remember the other 2 women's names without looking it up, but one of them delivered a baby and named him Peregrine, which basically means new beginning or new hope or something like that. And the 3rd woman delivered a stillborn child, all on the ship in a living space of 60 by 25 feet. We're not talking any privacy. We're not talking a maternity ward here. We're talking find a corner someplace and let the women tend to you as best they can and send all the men upstairs until it's over with. And amazingly, Peregrine and Oceanus lived to adulthood, married and have descendants. It was just remarkable to me. So they're on the ship. They stay there. They can get off at this point. They can go on land and stretch their legs and just kind of walk around and see what there is there to do there. But it's the middle of winter, and it's a very cold winter. So there's not much going on shore. Meanwhile, the men are exploring. On the 3rd expedition, they come across the place, which is where they established their settlement. It's called Plymouth. It's Plymouth, Massachusetts today. So they sailed across the bay, they dropped anchor, they got off the ship, they started building their houses. They built first a big community center. They were still living on the ship, but sometimes the men were staying ashore overnight, especially once they got the shelter built, until they started getting their first houses done. But by now, the deprivations were just taking a toll. They were doing funerals at the rate of 1 and 2 and 3 a day. From December through February, it finally started getting better. And so the ones who weren't either out exploring or sick themselves were taking care of all those who were sick. It must have been just gruesome. But that finally calmed down. Meanwhile, the natives were well aware that they were there, and they were very suspicious of them because a decade earlier, now not 1614, One of the other English merchants that had come over to trade decided that he wanted to trade in human trafficking as well as beaver furs and cod and other things. He kidnapped 27 of them, took them to Spain to sell into slavery. 3 Catholic friars bought the freedom of 3 of them. One of them is known in history as Squanto. You may have heard that name. His full name is Tisquantum. We don't know how this happened, so I made this part up, but somehow he got from Spain to London, where he basically became a house servant to another English merchant, a guy named John Slaney. He wasn't exactly a slave, but he didn't have any options. He didn't know the language at first. He had no idea where he was. So he might as well stay and be a house servant as opposed to, wandering around by himself in a country where he not only doesn't know the language, he knows nothing about the English ways of money and how life happens. He was just totally lost. So he stayed with the Slaney family. He learned English, came back over in 1619. Selling himself as an interpreter. That's because he could speak the native languages and he could speak English. So he was very helpful in negotiating trade deals back and forth. He had grown up in a town called Patuxent, which happens to be exactly where Plymouth, Massachusetts is. Patuxent was abandoned when the settlers came upon it because a pandemic had swept through the land while Tisquantum was off in England. The pandemic wiped out the native population to the tune of about 2/3 of the people died right before the English showed up. So Tisquantum made his way back to his hometown, and there was nothing there except bones drying in the sun because there was no one left to bury them. It turns out he did have some family that lived, but they had left that area. He went and talked to the Grand Chief. They called him the Massasoit. That's a title that means like the leader of the leaders, and assigned himself to him and his native nation, which is the Pokanoket people. Massasoit was a little bit suspicious of this guy, but he also realized there were real advantages to having somebody around who could understand what the English were saying. So he tolerated him. So another person, Samsoit, who had also learned English from all the trade deals with the English, those two went down to visit the English. Samsoit went first. He walked in while they were preparing their fields for their spring crops and walked into the village and said, "Welcome, Englishmen," which just totally stunned the English settlers. And then Samsoit came back with Tisquantum, who spoke more English than he did. And a little while later, Massasoit came calling. And then in the spring of 1621, something I never learned in history, which seems profoundly important, especially in light of the little devotion that you did to start us, Massasoit approached them and said, "We need to work out a treaty." So they spent the entire afternoon of, I can't remember the exact date, but it was March of 1621, hammering out about a 7-point treaty that basically said, we'll watch your back, you watch our back. If any of our people harm you, you are free to punish them as you think fit. If any of your people harm us, then we will punish them as we see fit, and we will support each other. That treaty lasted until 1675, when the first generation of leaders had all gone to their graves, mostly of old age, and more English ships kept coming, so the place was getting overcrowded. And younger leaders just didn't see the advantages of collaboration and cooperation, and so literally war broke out, and it was devastating. The toll of the people that lost their lives in King Philip's War, if you go on the percentage of the population in the area at the time, was greater than the losses of the Civil War. And yet I had never heard about that until I started doing my research for this book. King Philip was actually Massasoit's son. He was the heir apparent when Massasoit died. Massasoit kept trying to solidify relationships with the English because they just kept coming and coming and coming. At first, the natives outnumbered the settlers by a huge ratio, but over the next couple of decades, that ratio changed and they were now the minority in their own homeland. So he gave his sons Christian names, and he didn't convert to Christianity, but he came to be a great respecter of their religion, and vice versa. as they got to know Massasoit and observed his leadership and observed the ways of the Native people, they came to have a great respect for them. So it was really a pretty good situation for a while until it wasn't. So Mary, through all of this, she kept taking in stray people. William Bradford lived with her for a while, with the family for a while when he was a young single adult. And then again, right after they arrived in the New World, while William Bradford was out on an expedition, his wife Dorothy fell overboard and drowned. So he was single again. So the Brewster family took him in. They took in Priscilla Mullins when her parents both died in the Great Sickness. They took in 2 foster children out of a family of 4 that were kind of foisted on the Mayflower at the last minute. We don't know if those children, their last name is Moore, we don't know if the Moore children were orphans, or as frequently happened back in that era, families couldn't take care of their kids, so they shipped them off to other families to be like junior servants. You know, we might judge that harshly, but they did what they had to do in those days. There was no welfare. If you couldn't feed your children, then you couldn't feed your children. So these 4 children were foisted on the Mayflower, and the Brewster family ended up being responsible for 2 of them. The other 2 went to 2 different families. Though Mary Brewster was the matriarch of the manor, then she was an exile. Then she was the mother figure on the Mayflower, taking care of people who were having babies and people who were getting sick and people who were just trying to make sense out of everything. She ended up being a foster mom. She ended up being one of the surviving women in the new colonies. So a lot of the responsibility for women's work fell to her and the 4 other women who lived to tell the story. So I'm just absolutely fascinated by her biography. My follow-up to this book is going to be a fictional diary of Mary Brewster, because she left no written record. We have no idea what she thought about all of this. We have to speculate about all that. But we know a lot about the circumstances of her life. So I'm going to write a fictional diary of the story from her perspective. So I could go on, but perhaps I've gone on enough and you may all have some questions. Nope.
How old was Mary Brewster when she died?
Around 60. So she, yeah, which is a long time in that era. And she died of natural causes.
Okay.
She and William were in their mid-40s when they sailed.
You may have said at the beginning, but how many generations back would Mary Brewster be to you?
She's my 12th great-grandmother.
Wow.
Yeah. We kept the Brewster name in that line of the family through my great-grandmother's maiden name was Brewster. And then she married a Ross, and then my mother was the result of that union, and my mother married a Heber, and then I married a Hauweisen. So 2 generations now are German names covering up many generations of English names.
That's very cool and very interesting. And there's several books that I have read over the years that intersect, and TV shows and movies that intersect with things that you're talking about, to where it's like I'm pulling from here and pulling from there with what you're saying, and it makes it all come together. So I thank you for doing all of that, for saying all of that.
Yeah, I wrote in historical fiction because I wanted them to talk to each other.
Yes.
And I too have read many books, particularly about the English experience, less books about the Native experience because there haven't been that many until fairly recently. The Native stories have been preserved through oral tradition. They spent the winters teaching their history to the next generation around the fires during the wintertime. There's a lot of Native authors that are writing and publishing now, but that's a fairly new phenomenon. But I really wanted both perspectives in one book, and I really wanted people talking to each other. So that meant it had to be historical fiction, but it's based on as much research as I could find.
Where can we get the book?
Where?
Yes.
It's available in several places. The one that I'm encouraging people to go to is a place called bookshop.org. Because that is, and I didn't know it existed until they put my book on it, that is basically the nonprofit version of Amazon. So bookshop.org, for one thing, the book will be $1 cheaper there. They share a percentage of their profits with independent bookstores. So that's one option. It is available on Amazon. So if you have an Amazon account and that's how you like to get your books, it's there now. They may tell you that it's delayed because COVID. The place who's actually publishing the book shut down last spring, which put us behind several months on the schedule. And then as we were really cranking up to get the book out for a release yesterday is the official publication date. They had to close down again because somebody in their plant tested positive for COVID. So they had to close and do a deep clean, and there's a backlog. So you may get that message from Amazon, but it is in production. The ebook is supposed to be there now. And we're producing an audio version of the book. We'll hope to have that out right around Thanksgiving time. And so you can go to bookshop.org, amazon.com, or what I really encourage you to do is go to your local bookstore and ask them to order it for you, because that way you're supporting your local bookstores. And I'll tell you, they have just really had a hard time lately competing with the whole Amazon phenomenon, and now with the pandemic not being able to even have their shops open for people to come in and browse. So I'm encouraging people to support their local bookstores. Anything else?
Did you have to travel to do your research, or were you able to do a lot of it on the internet, or how did you find the things that you were using for research?
I traveled a lot. You can do a lot on the internet, you really can. And I could supplement internet with phone interviews. I did quite a few of those, but I love to travel. So I have a granddaughter, one of the ones who's bicultural, and she was going to do a study abroad program in England. She's a theater major. She was going to do a study abroad program in London, and then she decided not to go. She didn't want to give up the friendships that she had on campus. She didn't want to miss the semester of that. So she opted not to go, but by then I'd already decided I was going to go to London and visit her. So I said, okay, so Sarah, here's the deal. We're going anyway. You won't stay a semester, you'll stay a week. So we went up to Scrooby, and there's no place to stay there. It's a village. It's just a tiny little village now. It was probably a community of a couple thousand back in the late 1500s. But we tromped around there and we ate lunch there, and we saw what there was to see there and took pictures. And then we spent most of our time in England, of course. But then and that was in 2017. About a year later, my husband, who loves genealogy and has spent a lot of hours researching his Italian heritage, wanted to do a genealogy cruise with Ancestry.com, was sponsoring a cruise on the QE2 that would sail from England back to New York. We could do it either way. They were making a round trip from England to New York and back. So we flew over to England and sailed back on this genealogy cruise. But said, if we're going to England, you don't have to talk me into going to England. My suitcase is ready to go anytime there's a trip to England. But I want to go over to Holland. I want to go see Leiden. I'd always wanted to go to Leiden because I'd heard so much about it. And there's a man over there who was raised in the States, went there to the University of Leiden. It's one of the finest universities in Europe and one of the oldest ones. He went there to study, fell in love with the city, and never left. So he's established an American Pilgrim Museum in an old house that was built in 1400. Just a tiny, tiny little place. But I went there, I went to his museum. I just walked around the city. They're very proud of the fact that the Pilgrims were there for 10 years. There's plaques and information all over the place. There's a big church called Peterskirk that the Pilgrims, or the Separatists, were not part of that community, but they lived right in that neighborhood, and they have basically become a museum. So the actual birth, marriage, death records of the Separatists are recorded in those church archives. And it's not a functioning church anymore. It closed a few years ago. It's now a public venue for concerts and things. but it's also a museum. So the inside of that church is just full of information about their time in Holland. So yes, and then I went to a place in Massachusetts called Plymouth Plantation. I'd already been there earlier in life. I went back again specifically to research. I interviewed the man who's the head of the native village. There's two villages. There's the native village and the English village. He granted me an interview, so I got to interview him for an afternoon. And then I went to Pilgrim Hall in Plymouth and met with the director there, and she kind of let me see behind the scenes and show me some things that aren't generally available to the public. That was the fun part. That was the easy part. I love doing that. The hard part was deciding what I could use and what I had to just not try to cram into the book because it really wasn't fitting, but I knew it and I wanted to use it. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the name of the town again that was in the Netherlands? I couldn't.
Leiden. Leiden, and it's spelled Leyden was the way they spelled it in the 1600s. Today it's spelled Leiden. It's about halfway between Amsterdam and The Hague. So when we went over there, we had a travel agent help us put all this trip together. He said, there is no way I can get you from London to Leiden back to Southampton for this cruise in the amount of time you have available without spending all of your time on a train. You're just going to have to rent a car. So I rented a car, and it was a 5-speed. I do know how to drive a stick shift, but it was a 5-speed. At least they drive on the same side of the road as we do. In the rain, in the middle of a major metropolitan area with signs that were in Dutch, not English, but I recognized the word Hague. And they kept saying, just aim for the Hague and then get off before you get there and go to Leiden. So that all worked.
And what was the name of the Ancestry.com cruise that you said?
The Queen Elizabeth II, QE2.
Oh, QE2. Okay.
Yeah. Queen Elizabeth II. Beautiful, beautiful ship. Oh my gosh, it was gorgeous. I haven't done a lot of cruises. I've done a few, but nothing like this one. It really was a floating 5-star hotel. It was wonderful. And the Ancestry.com thing was amazing. We had sessions every day with professional genealogists, and they would they'd already done the research. They'd already picked the people whose stories they were going to tell, including the captain of the ship. But they would do a presentation every day about what their research had found. And then they would do some big reveal about, did you know that this ancestor of yours did this amazing thing? That was really fun. I'm sure some of them got screened ahead of time. They weren't going to disclose. Did you know that your ancestor was in prison for 10 years for embezzling? I'm sure it was selective, but yeah.
This may be off the subject, but is there a site that you can go to find your relatives, your ancestors in England?
There are many. I would start with, you're up in the Dallas area?
Yes.
Okay. I would start with a phone call to the Clayton Genealogical Library here in Houston. It's one of the top 5 in the country, and their staff is unbelievably helpful. So they could probably give you a short list of places that you could go, but you can get into the passenger list of the ships that have come over as far back as they've been tracing those things. That's how I found out my ancestors didn't come through Ellis Island. My German ancestors, they came before there was an Ellis Island. The Clayton Genealogical Library here in Houston, that is just a wonderful resource, and you don't have to come to Houston to take advantage of it. You can just call them and ask them a few questions, and they'll lead you to some websites. And they're doing some online things now because they too have been closed down. So they're doing some online things, and through your website, you can get a list of those, and then via Zoom, you can participate in some of those. They do an orientation for people who are just coming to use the library for the first time that I've gone to. I've gotten a tour of the library through another women's group I belong to. That was our program one month, was going down there. It's just, I can't say enough good things about the Clayton Genealogical Library.
That's good information.
Yeah. So a couple questions I have for you. I know you're all retired teachers. Do you cover the gamut from kindergarten through high school?
Yes.
Collectively?
Yes.
Well, my personal shout out to you. I know enough about education from having raised 2 children who are in it and then 6 grandkids who came up through the system to know that you have one of the hardest jobs there is and probably get the least amount of respect, not to mention compensation that you deserve of any profession. And I'll bet you're all really glad that you're retired right now as teachers.
Absolutely.
This
Yes.
kind of classroom plus students in front of you, I cannot imagine how hard this is for both teachers and the parents trying to juggle all this. Oh my goodness, just how hard.
Yes, I hear stories constantly because my daughter-in-law is a teacher and she's Zooming constantly too.
Yeah.
And having to monitor what the kids are watching or doing at the same time that they're supposed to be doing their lessons. So I hear all kinds of interesting stories, yes.
My granddaughter that chose not to study abroad in London, she had a 1-year internship at a theater here in Houston, which went dark in March, but they kept her on to their credit until the internship ended naturally in July. But she's a boomerang kid back home with her parents while she's looking for work. She is tutoring her 6-year-old cousin 2 days a week because he's supposed to be on a computer screen from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon with a few breaks, and he's 6. And the dad is home trying to do his own job from home. And the mom is back, she works in a hospital, so she's back at the hospital doing her job. So Sarah 2 days a week becomes the supervising nanny for the education program. It's just what a challenge, what a challenging time we're in.
Yes, it is.
Well, thank you all for letting me visit with you. I've really enjoyed it. I wish you all the best and enjoy retirement and keep on keeping on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Kathy. Really
Thank you very much.
appreciated you coming up.
Okay, and Hattie, thank you for the invitation and give my regards to Mel.
Okay,
I'm
he's
here.
right here.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Mel, how are you?
Hi, Kathy.
Hey.
Thank
Good
you.
to see
It was excellent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm happy to do these speaking gigs for other groups. So if you have another group that wants to hear about it, let me know. As long as we're doing it by Zoom, I can go anywhere.
That's what I was going to say. We don't really like Zoom, but
No.
we wouldn't have been able to hear you if we hadn't have been doing a Zoom meeting. Since
Right.
you're
It's a bit of a silver lining in a pretty nasty situation. Yeah.
Thank you very much for being with us today. And
Thank
you
you for having me.
stay on. We've got some business stuff to do, but we really appreciate you being here. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, I'm going to sign off. Thank you
All
all.
right.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Belois, can you advance the slide? Because that was so wonderful and good. I don't even want to follow up with business after that, but I think we do have
Okay, just a minute. Let's see where we are. It's not moving right now.
Did it fall asleep?
I don't know. I'm pushing one button after another. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and start again. Maybe that will work. I can't even get out of it.
My
Matriarch.
my husband logged in while Kathy was talking, and he said I looked like I was asleep. I just wanted to let y'all know I was not asleep. I was definitely concentrating on what she was saying and really enjoying her program. So Hattie, thanks for sharing that her information with Terry and this working out, because that was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Really good. Okay, Janelle, you're up. Just a quick thing, and Belois, I think there's a slide for her too. There it is.
Okay, so I guess all I want to say, guys, is to remind you that there's lots of opportunities to win money. You know, we're in that section between September and November, whether we can win money and through this membership contest, both personally and for our unit. So if you haven't paid your dues, we need to get that done sooner now than later. Right now we have 103 members and our goal is still 120. We're creeping up on it, but we're still a long ways. Please recruit your retired school friends, families, spouses, etc., etc., etc. So I guess that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, and that was great. Absolutely great. Terry, an update on the programs? We can't hear you. You're muted. Still.
Maybe she muted me.
Oh, I can't sit much longer.
Oh, is she still logged on? She is, isn't she?
Yeah, I can't tell.
Okay. Well, I'll just go ahead. Dr. Smith was supposed to have talked today, but he had a scheduling conflict. So we're planning on him coming in November. And actually, the school, Duncanville schools will open for face-to-face, I think next week. I don't know what the real plan is there. I just know that that's scheduled to happen. So I'm sure this week that he's juggling all kinds of balls in the air to get that to work out for next week. So hopefully then in November he'll be able to join us, and we can hear what's really happening behind the scenes.
Vicki, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes. Okay. So I just talked about Dr. Smith.
I heard.
Okay.
I heard. There's supposed to be 1,200 kids attending the high school. So that's a little more than a fourth of what's there normally. And I just thought that was interesting. I don't know how that's going to work. I know one teacher told me last night that they're still staying in the same classes they would be in, so they're not being evened out. And she literally does not have enough square footage in her room to put one class of kids and have them distanced. So teachers are a little concerned about that. So it'll be interesting to see what he says.
Yeah. And then Hattie is also going to speak next month, and then on the foundation TRTF update, and then December 8th. Do you have anything there you need to share with us?
Yes. Okay, I want you to be thinking about your favorite Christmas decoration or ornament. You're going to show it to us on your computer and tell us a little 1-minute story or just a sentence about why it means a lot to you. We are going to vote on the best story, the best ornament, the best decoration. And yes, do I have prizes again? Y'all, I'm so excited. I have a friend who had a little gift shop in Spring, Texas that he shut down, and he gave me all kinds of stuff to use for prizes. So bring your ornament or your decoration.
Okay. Valois, next. Oh, it's going to be me. I'm talking for Terry Schultz right now, even though she's here. Go ahead with the next slide. The minutes were emailed to you in the October newsletter, and nobody sent any corrections in. Were there any corrections that you saw? Then the minutes are approved as they were emailed. And then the treasurer's report, same thing. I did want to point out whenever I made the PowerPoint that we had 100, well, this was September's treasurer's report. There were 102 members. And also remember last time in the meeting, we did this thing where you could get your cash prize or you could donate it back to the book fund. And so our book fund, I highlighted it there, $475. Our usual budget for that is $500, or at least that's our goal, is to have $500 right there. So we're doing great in that situation. And then the bank balance is down at the bottom, $5,160 some odd dollars, just to be clear with everything that's happening there. And then you're messing with my mind, Valois.
I'm so sorry.
I think it's Susie's turn.
Well, the slide says healthy living.
Okay, well, healthy living it is.
Okay.
Nettie, is she still on here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Anything you want to share with us?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you for your prayers and your phone calls. Knowing my illness, I'm still down, but I'm getting back up. This month is also Breast Awareness Month. And if you haven't had your mammogram, please try to make an appointment to get your mammogram sometime this month or next month. And it's also Domestic Violence Month. And I'm sure some of us, we all know someone who's has domestic violence or been in a domestic violence. So if you see something, you should say something. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something to that one?
Yes, please.
And I don't know whether it's really been publicized that much, but the Walk Across Texas will start January the 25th, ending, I believe, March the 21st. So we need to get our teams together.
Okay, we need to start. I need to put that on my list, and we need to put that in the newsletter of how we're going to join teams. So right quick, who wants to be a team leader? Hold up your hand if you want to be a team leader. Terry Vihan said yes. Valois said yes. I'm scanning here to see who else has got their hand up. I think that's it. Kay, do you have your hand up?
No. I don't know why I'm not on there. I was, and it went away, and I came back. So I'm not touching anything.
Okay, so if we need more leaders, then we'll ask again. And then if you want to be on either Terry Vihan's team or Valois's team, email them so they know that you're on their team, and then we'll spread the word through the newsletter to try to get more people. I can't remember how many people were supposed to be on the teams.
8.
8? Wow. Okay. I don't think mine had that many, but yeah, and we'll send out the details for that. Okay, Susie, I think it's you now.
Yes, it is.
Today starts early voting. So if you plan to vote early, go soon. Of course, the election is November the 3rd. And look at the sites and kind of decide for whom you're going to vote. And I mean all the way down the ballot. Please don't just take one top ticket and go with that. Research and see, because actually what affects us more day to day are the ones down ticket. They're the ones that impact our lives most here. So I would encourage you to research. I personally never vote straight ticket. I've always crisscrossed and back and forth, because my favorite saying is God didn't color code all the stinkers of the world. So and didn't put R's and D's on them, so I figure that no one has all the winners in their columns. So do some research and look and see.
Okay, thank you. There was
Susie?
Yes.
Straight ticket is not even available anymore.
I know, but some people can, go straight down it too.
Okay.
So I've been told that's what somebody's plan is. So, and yeah, you can't vote straight ticket, but I would say vote with education behind you as to why.
Absolutely, right.
I did hear on the news last night that the 4 busiest days of early voting are today and tomorrow, and then the last 2 days of early voting. Those are the busiest days. And the least busy day is a Sunday afternoon. And to me, I would think, I don't want to go on a Sunday afternoon because there's all those working people going. But maybe I'm wrong in that. But just a thought and just some general information that you might want to know. So
I'm glad I'm with you, Vicki. I don't want to be with those working people.
Sherry, I think you're up next if you have anything to say about the book drive.
Oh, well, we still don't know anything about Barnes & Noble, what they're going to do. I'm really doubtful they're going to do it. So just if the membership will just be helpful and get some of the little golden books, and we can have those. We just won't be able to give them to every first grader in the 3 districts that we've given before. Excuse me. So we can certainly get, we've got a lot of the outreach places and the hospitals and some other places that we can share. Anyway, that's all I know. We'll hopefully hear from them. I will, of course, give them a call, but we don't have Suzanne Newell anymore. It's I don't know if it's a man or a woman. Her name's Kate. The name is Casey. And I just have emailed with them once. So they're new to this, and they were going to check with Suzanne Newell to see what exactly was involved. But again, we've not had any luck whenever Suzanne didn't do it. So keep your fingers crossed.
Well, is she still working there at that location?
I'm not sure. They just said she had moved up. I guess she got some kind of promotion. So I don't know if she's still there at Cedar Hill or not. Like I said, we've not talked with anybody directly. Initially, my email went to Suzanne, and she just passed it on to this Casey person.
Okay. Well, that was good of her to do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she's such a delightful person.
Okay.
I hate that she's not going to be there for us because she was so good.
Yes. Well, I was just thinking and trying to do some quick math and not being successful while you were talking and also listening to you about, okay, well, if we have, let's say that there's 1,000 kids that we want to get books for, and they're $5 each, that's $5,000. That's a ton of money. And thinking, okay, well, we only have 500 in our budget, so we're really going to have some people to collect books on their own.
Right. And what was I going to say?
Really rely.
Barnes & Noble will give us a discount. Last year they did give us a discount when we had some money to spend. So maybe they would give us a discount, which it wasn't. I think it was only maybe 10 or 15. Maybe it was 20%. Linda's my math person, so she's not here. Anyway, we'll see. But there's just no way we can get to all those first graders in the 3 districts.
Yeah.
How many was that? What was the number? Do you
Oh
remember?
gosh, like I said, Linda's the numbers person. I don't know, but it was every first grader in Duncanville, Cedar Hill, and DeSoto. So
I think it was over 1,000 and maybe 2,000.
I'm thinking 1,700.
I was thinking 1,800.
Okay.
It was a lot.
It's still a lot of money.
Hey, Sherry, you might check with Leslie at the Media Center. Remember, she works part-time.
Right. Yeah, I can check with her.
And I bet she knows where Suzanne is.
Yeah, most likely.
Sherry, do they need to be new or can they be like new?
Well, they can be, if they're like new. We just don't want to give any that are written in or torn pages or, they need to be almost new.
What about half-price books? Has anybody? I don't go there, but does
somebody? I think, was it Peggy? Did you go to Half Price last year?
I did, and it takes a little bit of time, and you have to really kind of look through them. But just stuck in the middle will be some brand new ones. So that's where I got brand new ones last year.
Okay.
So,
Good
you
to
know,
know.
check at the half price places.
Well, whenever Kathy a while ago was talking and she said that Barnes and Nobles wasn't open to the public, is that a true fact right now? Because I haven't gone.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that either.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
I misunderstood.
She said Barnes and Noble, the bookshop.org was part of Barnes and Amazon.
Uh-huh.
So,
Oh, she did. No, bookshop.org was like Amazon, but it's a nonprofit.
Oh, okay. Okay. She mentioned local bookstores. Where in the heck is a local bookstore? All I know is Barnes and Noble and Half Price Books, and I don't know any local
Lucky
bookstores.
Dog Books. Is it Lucky Dog Books or something? But that's a used book. But I don't know where a regular bookstore is.
I don't either. There
Oh.
used to be a Maxwell's used to be in DeSoto, but
Wild
no.
Detectives in Oak Cliff, but it's mostly adult, I think.
Yeah.
What
Well,
was
there's
that?
the Bills. Is that what it was called?
Oh,
Bills?
Bill's. That's
Railroad
a
Shop?
used book.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still. I don't think he's in business.
I don't know either.
Isn't there one in Bishop Heights? A
Bishop
bookstore?
Heights, yes, it's called the something detective and all.
Yeah, the Wild Detectives.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, anyway.
So
So much for local bookstores.
we need to figure out ways to get some books on our own so that we don't just have to rely on our budget right there.
Right,
But
exactly.
I did go, it was out in South Lake, but I went to Barnes and Noble I guess 2 weeks ago. And so they're open.
Oh,
and
good.
doing-
Okay.
And doing great business out in South Lake.
Okay. Good. Good to know. Okay, let's go on with the announcement. Oh, sorry, I forgot that Valois has something she needed to share.
Yes, we are now having a statewide contest. This is for active teachers, or we should say active public school employees, where we are trying to get their business, so to speak, to have them join with TRTA. So what they're doing would be to offer, hopefully the teachers will join. If they do, their name will be put are placed into a drawing. With the drawing, we'll have 5 drawings around the state. So for us, meaning in District 10, we would be part of the area with Districts 8, 9, 10, and 11. And the majority of these active school employees, we come in contact with them through the seminars, the retirement education seminars. And yes, we still are having them across the state. We have 4 before December. Then we will have, I think, many more that would be in the spring, but they're all virtual. In fact, I received notification today or yesterday that TRS, who is sponsoring all of these, they are extending virtual. They were going to start with in-person in January, and now it's been moved back to maybe in March. But my personal opinion is that we will not see any in-person type of seminars until hopefully, next September. So if you would share, do you have any friends that are teaching? And so we would like for to ask that this flyer be sent to the friends that are still teaching. And we'll send this flyer out so that you can have an easy access to send it to someone. So that's all that I have for Retirement Ed.
Okay, great. And the retirement seminar for us,
yes.
That's going to be sometime in February, is that right?
Yes, I did receive a notice back, but that's when I learned that about. So yes, it would definitely be virtual, but she didn't select. It's either going to be Saturday, February the 20th or Saturday, February the 27th at 10. And it should be about a 2-hour session.
Okay.
And it's all be done virtual. All we will do is create a flyer and we will disseminate the flyer. That's basically all that we're going to be doing. We do have something that'll be working in the background for registration, and I will be in charge of that so that it's sort of a beta test for an RSVP system that will be placed into the state. So I'll talk about that later.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, announcements. October 5th through the November 12th. That's that TRS insurance webinars. I was just wondering, is there anybody who doesn't have the TRS insurance?
I don't.
Okay, so there's a few of us who don't. I went to sign up for the webinars, and I think it was before the newsletter went out, and the soonest I could get into one of those webinars is next week sometime. So they're filling up really fast. So if you haven't signed up, you need to do so. Is the point of that? And it was in. I think you can go to the TRS website and get to the link to that if you can't find it somewhere on a piece of paper. October 26th is the District 10 Fall Conference via Zoom. And right now, I think there's 8 of us who are participating in that. And Benja is one of them. And so I'm super excited that she's going to do that with us. And honestly, I don't have the paper in front of me, so I can't tell you who all it is. But I think Ramona's on there, and I think Valois is on there, and I'm on there, and
I'm on there.
Mimi and Susie and Nettie, okay. And there were a few that I didn't ever hear back from, so I put your name down that you're going to attend. So that's your little message that if I didn't hear back from you, you better let me know because you've been registered. And then October 30th is the last day to early vote, and November 3rd, if you haven't voted yet, do it. We already talked about the next meeting. And is there anything question-wise, anything somebody needs to share?
I'd like to ask about on the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
We have scholarship. Are we doing anything for scholarship?
Terry, is she still on here? Terry Behan?
Yes. I don't have any information yet. You know, we were going to do that the second semester of school.
Okay.
Because it was for the summer.
Right.
Things
Okay.
teachers did over the summer, this next summer, summer
I
20.
just wanted to check on that and see if we were doing anything. Also, I wanted to tell Hattie that I'm planning to do the TRF, the foundation check for the $200 next month in November. So it'll go with our November fundraiser for TRF.
TRTF?
TRTF, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. There were several things then that just popped in my brain based off of what you just said, and now I can't remember. You talked about technology, and then what was the other thing you just said? TRTF.
And the scholarship.
Valois, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Has anyone signed up to become a tutor on the TRTF tutor online program?
Know about it.
I signed up, but I have absolutely no information, and I truly do not expect to be called because I would only be interested in, Spanish. I don't know how many calls there would be, but I mean, that people have signed up. I mean, they are getting close. I was on a board meeting, a TRTA board meeting yesterday for 4 hours, and they have quite a few. They're getting close to 1,000.
Oh, great.
1,000 tutors?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I understood the right thing.
They do have a core group now, maybe of about 20, and I don't know how those individuals were selected, and they are tutoring, or they're going through the process of trying to get the schools involved and just a committee, but they would also be tutors. But the pay, and you would be paid.
Oh, wow.
So it's an online tutoring program that some of you might be interested in. And of course, we have no idea whether our area would be interested. They're going to be, contacting the different school districts. There's been a lot of interest shown.
That's good.
My
My daughter's doing that tutoring right now. She's almost finished though.
With this program?
Well, I don't know if it's exactly this program, but she's getting paid and she does tutoring 4 days a week from like 7 in the morning till 7 at night. It's long hours, but
Wow.
she does get paid and she has to be available all the time that it's on.
No, it's going to be much shorter hours than that. It's my impression. This
Oh, well, that'd be good.
That would be, you know, like afternoon, maybe tutoring or, you know, like on the weekend or something like that, but I'm not positive.
But this is only for like 3 or 4 months. And so she's almost through. So she's looking for a job because she's not doing special ed now. She said she just couldn't do that.
Yeah, but that's almost like substitute teaching.
Right.
Okay, she's doing substitute teaching. And of course, you'll be given everything that you need, I mean, in order to do, you know, help with whatever tutoring that might be needed. But anyway, it's an option if anyone might be interested.
Well, Lois, how many numbers do we have, or how many people do we have today?
Oh, I have 20.
Okay. Subtract my husband if he's on that list.
No, he's not.
Okay. All right. Janelle, you ready to draw?
Well, wait a minute. The speaker, I'll take the speaker off too. So there's 19.
Okay.
I have 30 in my bag, but I'll draw one right quick.
Wait a minute. There was one question on DP. Oh, that's all it said.
Oh, that was my husband. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, he's off.
He was logged in, so in case anybody needed help, he could help. Like last month, he helped me and several others too. Yeah.
Is that what you said?
I didn't hear.
Okay, hold on. Let's keep drawing. Okay, number two.
Number two is Terry Behan.
Woo!
All right, Terry.
Well, donate it to the book. Go.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Terry.
So that puts us at $500 in there. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Terry.
No problem. You're welcome.
Anything else anybody needed to share about someone that's part of our group that you've heard from that we haven't seen or anything like that?
All I wanted to say something. I have not received any membership for the entire month of October. So we need to get busy.
Okay. All right. And then Lee, do you have any, is she still on here? Lee, are you on here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Have you heard anything else from Rhonda Nelson?
No, I have not.
Okay. Can you share what you do know about her dad?
All I know is that she put on Facebook that her dad passed away, and that's I don't know if she went to Virginia. I don't know if she stayed here. All I know is I sent her a sympathy card.
And I did too. So Hattie, maybe we need to send her a sympathy card.
Sorry, I didn't get the name.
Rhonda Nelson.
Rhonda, okay.
And the address should be correct in the directory, but Lee, what was the name of that town so she'll know? Do you remember?
LaRue.
LaRue, L-A-R-U-E is in the town, so you can check what's in the directory and make sure that's right.
Okay.
And
did I see correctly on Facebook that either Christine Dodge's mother or mother-in-law died?
Her mother.
What?
Her mother.
Christine's mother.
Yes.
Yes. She was 94 years old.
Oh, wow.
She was amazing.
I'm sorry, Christine, I couldn't.
Chris is probably down there.
Yes, she was a teacher, and she loved books, and so there was a book on top of her casket at her graveside ceremony, and I mean the day was all about books. There was a bookmark with her picture on it, and a bookshelf of some of her favorite books for people to take one.
Oh,
it was lovely.
Neat.
That's cool. Yes. Sweet memories like that. Yeah.
Do any of y'all know Kenna McKee?
Yes.
Okay, her husband died yesterday.
Died when?
Yesterday.
Oh,
No.
Yes.
know that.
So I just know that he had been put on hospice.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting, it's breaking up.
It's Kenna McKee. She was a coordinator in the Bill ISD.
Can't hear you.
You're breaking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenna McKee.
Kenna McKee. And it was her husband, is that right?
Correct.
Right. Her husband that passed away. And Kenna was, she worked at the high school, is that right?
Yes.
A coordinator for where she was located, actually. I remember her.
She was career tech counselor for a while, and then she was career tech counselor and the counseling coordinator for the district.
Yeah.
And her name again?
Kenna, is that right?
One N. One N.
One N. McKee.
Correct.
McKee. Okay, thank you. Husband.
Anybody else like that? Because we are a family. We really are. And the connections that we have to each other are very special. And they're even more special whenever we get to give hugs. And you've heard me say it, that's the part that is messing with me the most, is that physical contact of being less than 6 feet apart. I really miss that. And so if there's anything, information like that y'all know, please pass it on and send cards, because
Vicki, Ann Hyman's son, Cliff Hyman, passed away.
Yes. I'm writing these down because there's so many I'm going to forget. Cliff Hyman is the person who passed away, or?
Right, it's Ann Hyman's son.
Okay.
I still need to take maybe one more picture.
Oh, okay.
In case.
Lee, do you want to show us your face? She just disappeared.
Who?
Can't see
me. This just went off.
There's one with a lot of pictures up here. And
Mimi isn't sitting in front of the screen, and neither is Hattie.
Well, I'll take one and we'll see if something comes up in between.
Hattie, we can see your right eye or your left eye. I'm not sure. There you go.
Hi, there we go. Mimi? No.
Smile, everybody.
1, 2, 3. Done. Thank you.
Are you done for good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody who helped today make today's meeting worthwhile. And
wait. Mimi's back.
Oh,
back,
okay.
I'm back.
All right.
Okay.
One more picture.
Okay.
Voila. Done.
Okay. All right. It was great to see everybody. And Joanne Douglas, didn't hear much from you, but I'm glad you were here today. Chris, awesome. Thank you for being here today, and also telling us about your mom and the sweet memories there. Kay, I like that chimney. I guess it's behind you.
Yeah, my iPad, I'm having to plug it in.
Oh.
Move.
Ninja, we talked about you. I said that you were signed up to go to the conference, not go, but virtually attend. So thank you for that. And Betty, thank you for doing the inspiration. Somebody want to do the inspiration for November? Come on. Oh, Ramona, yay! Ramona signed up just then. Okay. Thank you and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.